Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are excited to be talking to our forever AAFCA, Guga Mbatha-Raw, who is the star of the hit Apple TV Plus series, Surface. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, starting with our facilitator, Katia Woods, normally in Philadelphia, but today she's out in LA. Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Janita Davis in Denver, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, Al McGee in South Florida, and Nancy Green in Baltimore. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Sophie, are you ready to begin? Take me back. Where were you before? And before that? And before that? Can you keep going?
Do you know what it feels like to not remember anything? Everyone keeps telling me who they think I am.
It's a fresh start.
But if my life was so perfect, why did I try to end it?
Sophie, it's time to move forward.
But I need to know what really happened.
We do know.
No, we think we know, based on what we think happened. What if I didn't jump? Was there anything unusual about that day?
You were saying all kinds of crazy things. A man pushed you from the boat, your ID said one name, and you kept insisting it was something else.
It's the darkest hour in our forest.
People with perfect lives don't usually jump off of ferries. Day of the accident, your husband's alibi is a lie.
If you're starting to remember some things, that must be really scary.
Sometimes it's hard not knowing your own secrets. We can't just pretend we're new people or that the past doesn't exist.
You really don't remember, do you? Your husband's not who you think he is.
Why did you lie?
She's starting to ask questions I can't answer.
Maybe I was wrong about everything.
Sophie, what's going on?
Just putting the pieces together.
It's a perfect world.
I am Jonita Davis from The Black Cape. I love this character in this show, but it reminded me of the other characters. So a few other characters you've played, not in that they're the same person, but they start off as these underestimated people that, maybe they've been, overlooked, and, people just kind of dismiss them, or they're the weak ones that you feel you have to protect, but they end up being the most dynamic people in the series, or even some of the films you've been in. And I was just wondering, what kind of draws you to these characters that, kind of are these underestimated people, in some of these shows and films you've been in?
Well, thanks. Well, I suppose to talk about Surface specifically, I think what drew me was, like you said, the fact that Sophie initially seems like this very fragile, vulnerable figure as a woman who has unwittingly survived what she's been told is a suicide attempt. And I loved the fact that it somewhat subverts the classic damsel in distress idea, that we start with something that feels like a noir, but it's modern. And, we feel like she's looking to the men in her life and her friend Caroline, but, mostly her husband. And then later, Baden, who is Stephan James's character, who she finds out she was having an affair with, but she's looking at these other people outside of herself to define her. And it's really, as the season goes on, like you said, that she grows in autonomy, that she grows, going from fragile to fierce, as this like Sophie duality, this Tess character, this other side of her identity, and that she essentially is the mystery. So I love that in Surface, but generally as an actor, I love having an arc. And I think if you want your character to be somebody different at the end to the beginning, otherwise what's the point, right, of the journey? But also just to have a strong arc gives you more nuances to play, more of a journey to go on. And I think ultimately for women watching a character like Sophie, I think it's empowering and uplifting to see that journey, to see somebody maybe underestimated, to see somebody maybe insecure in their power or their identity growing in strength. I think that that's a compelling narrative, and I think it's an inspiring message.
It is, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique. And I really enjoyed this. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the fact that water plays such a central role in this. And I wanted to know if you could talk about that and sort of her journey in getting back to herself. Could you talk a bit about the women and sort of the purity of self?
Yeah, well, I'll have to ask you a bit more about that second part of the question, but I can definitely talk about the water as an image, in the show for sure. I mean, as one of your colleagues has the poster as the backdrop, but the idea of water being almost a character in the show, and there's something kind of fluid in more ways than one about Sophie, about her identity, about her sexuality, about just the nature of San Francisco being in the Bay Area, so much water there, the nature of her way that she stills herself, be it in her subconscious, in her nightmares of being underwater, be it in the bath where she has moments of revelation and stillness and meditation, be it in the rain where she meets Baden. I mean, we would joke sometimes when we were on set that it was like called the weekly wet, because every week there would be some scene where I would be like completely drenched for some reason or other, either in a swimming pool or a shower or something like that. But I love the motif of the water. I think it is almost like a character, like San Francisco is almost a character in the show. And I think it just gives the show a mystery and an ethereal quality that is also enhanced by Oliver Arnold's music, which again has that very elemental, it's subtle, it's nuanced, but I think it helps put you inside Sophie's head, and as this is somebody who's dealing with memory and identity, and it's very much from her point of view, I think the element of water is a very subtle, it can be subtle, but it can also be powerful. And I kind of like that with, as a metaphor for Sophie as a person, that she can be gentle, but she can also be forceful, and that water, kind of ties, a lot of the imagery of the show together. I can't remember your second question.
It was just with water having so much to do with purity, baptism, rebirth. And she, especially like in the beginning, people are telling her who she is. So instead of kind of knowing herself and the pureness of who she is and who she wants to be, she kind of has to go on this journey because other people are trying to impose on her why they liked her, why they thought that she was this way, and how she should be. So I kind of wanted to talk about how those two mesh and the arc of her character in that way, getting back to herself.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like you almost answered it yourself. I think it is, it is really that idea of rebirth, and that is, for those that see it, it's not in your face, but it's definitely there in the symbolism of the show. And I think, at the beginning, we have a woman who is, emerging from the water in a traumatized state, and by the end, we have a woman who is like, with a go bag, heading to another country, and taking her destiny in her own hands. There's still a lot of questions, but I think it is a new beginning for her at the end as well, so I'm really thrilled that you saw all of that symbolism, with the water imagery as well.
Thank you, and great job. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Hello, Google. This is Al McGee with YETicket.com.
Hi.
First of all, let me tell you this about Surface. I only watched this because you were in it. I'm telling you, really, I'm a big fan of yours. And also, congratulations on season 2 coming up soon. Apple TV say, okay, you can have a second season. But my main question is, the creator Veronica West, she created this show and had other writers in this too. Were you the main actress for this role? Did you audition for this role? Or how did you become the main actor in this role? And like I said, I only watched it because you're in it. And there's a couple of actors in there too. I enjoy it too.
Well, thank you. Well, and the project came to me through my agents. Initially, it was just the pilot episode, the first episode. And I saw that Hello Sunshine were attached to produce it. And Hello Sunshine is Reese Witherspoon's company, who I'd recently worked with on the morning show. So I knew who they were. I knew their sort of spirit of having projects that are very much female-centered, female empowerment in their, not just in their storytelling, but also in their company as a whole. So that definitely piqued my interest, because I thought, oh, it's a Hello Sunshine production, therefore, I know what their sort of their interests are. And then I read the script. I didn't audition per se. I met on Zoom with Hello Sunshine and Veronica, and essentially expressed my passion for the story. And I'd only read one script at that point, but I was very intrigued. I loved the fact that it was completely centered and from Sophie's point of view, and the mystery and the noir sort of feeling of it. And really, they asked me to come on board at an early stage before Apple even, as an executive producer, alongside them to pitch the show to Apple. And we had a plan, to maybe go to other places if Apple didn't take it, but they snapped it up within 24 hours. So we were on board, as a team. And so really, it was a wonderful opportunity to be mentored by, some of the amazing producers at Hello Sunshine, and learn about executive producing, as well as developing the character alongside, developing the show. So that's really how it came about.
Well, like I say, I enjoyed it with you in it. I can't wait to season 2, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Carolyn from So Here's What Happened and Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Gugu. I love your performance in the first season that we've seen so far of Surface. And something that I was thinking about as I was watching the show is how Tess's character, Sophie's character, her arc of discovery and her arc of basically being a private investigator in her own life is kind of similar to how, as an actress, you have to discover this character as you're playing her. So I want you to talk a bit about the challenges of playing Sophie and who we later find out can become Tess, and also the joys of a character like this, because I think it's so interesting that she starts with a blank slate. And as an actress, you have to, you start the script with a blank slate. And this show, we don't get answers. Every time we think we get an answer, there's more questions that are being thrown at us, and there's more questions that are being thrown at Sophie, and she doesn't know who to trust. And the only person she knows to trust is herself. Even if she knows nothing about herself, she knows that the only person she has that she can totally rely on is herself. So talk a bit about discovering Sophie as an actress, and how you go about not only playing a character where you really and truly don't even know where she's going to end up, because right now there is no conclusion to her story. Like, she's still learning.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, I think, about playing a character like Sophie that has no memory of herself. Actually, you can't just click into usual habits. Everything is fresh. Everything, it puts you in a very open-eyed state of mind as a performer. It becomes very sensory because, Sophie is exploring almost like, not like a child as such, but there is a sense that she's absorbing the world and she's trying to get information from the world like a young person would, explore everything on a sensory level. And so I really liked that as a way in, because I think so often when you're playing characters that are adults, there's so much that you can build with a backstory, and there's certain things that, people become set in their ways. And I think that the joy of Sophie is that she is discovering who she is at the same time as the audience are discovering who she is. And then she's also discovering that things that she thinks about herself may not be even correct or true. And exactly like you say, who does she trust? And then does she even trust herself? And I think that is, in Veronica's writing, all of the twists and turns that we have in the show that really keep you guessing. It's a journey of self-discovery for Sophie, but I think it's also, for the audience, and every character, is harboring a secret. So I think that that's always interesting, when you have characters that have secrets and what people choose to reveal. So yeah, it's been a real joy to kind of play with all of those different dynamics.
Hi, Gugu. Katia Woods with Couple Social and the Philadelphia Tribune. My question for you is, when you play a character like this, what have you learned about yourself? Because, she has to trust her instincts, and because a lot of it is gray or unknown. So what is it that you've taken and learned from Sophie?
Well, I always believe in trusting your instincts as well, for sure. I think you have to as an actor, and I think you have to as an artist and as a self-employed person, in this industry. What have I learned from Sophie? I mean, I think I've definitely learned, maybe not so much from the character, but certainly from the role of being a lead actor and being executive producer on the set. I think that's taught me a lot about leadership, and in terms of setting the tone, in terms of, being the number one on the call sheet, what that means, outside of the role, just in terms of the energy that you bring every day, to the crew and to people around you. I think that that's been a really interesting learning curve, knowing how to be responsible with that kind of power and respect. And yeah, I think you reminded me also, like, it is really all about trusting your instincts. And I think one of the things I appreciate about the themes of the show is, even though it's a luxury world, even though we're in a very privileged environment in Sophie's house and her closet and her clothes and her fabulous handbags, like, she's still not happy. And I think and there are still a lot of complexity and in toxicity in the relationships, even though they seemingly have these material things that society is telling us we should be striving towards. So I think for me, it's also a reminder to be authentic, and to strip down often from a lot of the status symbols and material wealth that I think, as I say, we're told to need. So I definitely appreciate that about the show.
Hey, Gugu. In the beginning, there are things that the audience, like, we kind of can anticipate certain things. Was that done intentionally? So it's like you're kind of in on it, that things about Sophie that she doesn't know?
What do you mean specifically?
Like, I found myself, like, in early on being able to be like, oh, this person is such and such in her life. And and then so it was just like, it made me feel like the other people, where I know certain things about Sophie that she's going to come to realization of, like, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in terms of the relationships, I suppose, in terms of James, the husband, where you sort of think, oh, did she jump or was she pushed? And early on, you could think, oh, wait, it's the husband. He's the bad guy. We set him up to be maybe untrustworthy or menacing. But I think that's part of the fun and joy of a psychological thriller for the audience, right? Is that it keeps you guessing. And I think the cool thing about the show and the cool thing about Veronica's writing is that as soon as you think you have it, you know, as soon as you think you've decided who these characters are and who's good and bad, and you know that it's never that simple, you know, that it's about the gray area, that like people are complex and people that maybe you have judged in one way, you know, 2 episodes later you're getting more information about them and you're seeing them in a different light, which I think makes it hopefully more engaging for the audience, because you're you know, you're invested in making decisions about people and then they get flipped on their head.
I have a question about your work as a whole, because I love Fast Color. That's my favorite movie ever. And so many of your characters are sci-fi characters. So I was wondering, do you have like a special place in your heart for sci-fi, or has that been just the way your career has turned? Because I know sometimes it's about the paycheck. It has to be, we have to earn money. But are you a sci-fi girl, or is that just the
It's
way
funny, I feel like I've only maybe played 2 or 3 sci-fi characters. It depends what you define as sci-fi. I mean, definitely you know, with Marvel and Loki, that's sci-fi, and Fast Color is like its own genre in a way. And I suppose maybe Cloverfield Paradox being a space movie, but that's kind of it in terms of, you know, so I feel like in all of the projects that I've done, I think there is quite a variety. I don't think it's exclusively sci-fi. I would say maybe the sci-fi projects take up more space in our culture, but they don't necessarily take up more space in my heart, you know. So but you know, for me it's about variety, and it's about I don't think it's about the genre per se for me. I think I like to try all different genres. I think it's about it's about the journey of the character for me, and being able to do something that I feel like I haven't done before, or have a challenge, you know, and have a juicy role. So yeah, I'm not especially a sci-fi nerd. I think it's just, for me, it's if I've done a psychological thriller or a drama or a period drama, you know, to be able to do and have a new challenge. And obviously sci-fi is quite popular in our culture at the moment, so yeah, that's where those opportunities come from, I guess.
Thank you. And I guess because like I said, Fast Color is my favorite, that's where I get the whole you're a sci-fi person to me.
Hi, Nancy again. So this one is more of a technical question. While watching the show, I was really fascinated by the running scenes. I love running. So I wanted to know, did they actually make you do all of that running? And if so, like how difficult was it? Or do you just kind of incorporate that like as naturally in your life?
Yeah, I'm not really a runner. I started running after the show, actually, here and there, just recently. But no, I've never really been a runner. I just ran for the scenes. But it wasn't as much running as it looks. I think maybe when it's edited together, you know, in a montage, they tried to find a running double for me. But I think running style is so specific, and they would always want to be on my face. So there's no, you know, and I could run. So, you know, in the end, I think maybe they used the double to set up the shots, but it was often, you know, me that was actually, as you see, it's as, you know, what's in the show is me. So so yeah, it was challenging, certainly in San Francisco, you know, some of those hills, as you see, but they were short sprints, you know, there was no like marathon running. Oh, thanks, you can put it here. Thanks, sorry. Yeah, they were short sprints, so it wasn't like it wasn't unachievable, you know.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering because I know I've heard in some other projects with other people, they really like they want the real sweat, so they're trying to make them run, and I was just curious as to whether or not that was done there. So thank you.
Now, Sophie, is she a sexual person? Because, you know, she's having a relationship with Baden, and also, you know, with her husband also. Is she looking for love in all the wrong places? What type of person is Sophie? But I know Sophie is the character on top, but her real character in the bottom, is she the same way?
Well, that's the mystery of the show. I think that's, who is Sophie? And that's, I think she has these different relationships, but I think ultimately they are just facets of her. They don't define her, and I think, that's kind of the joy of the show, is that, and that's what still propels us into season 2. And I'm so excited that we have a season 2, because we get to see her, as she interacts differently with her husband, as she interacts differently with Baden, but actually, who she is authentically on her own, and what's made her this way is what we're going to explore in the second season. So that's what you have to tune in to watch when that one comes around.
Yeah, because again, when I saw season 1, that's what I saw about her, Sophie. But then you change into another person. I wanted to know that. So thank you for answering that question. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to season 2. Thank you.
Hi, Google, Carolyn again. So I'm a big fashion nerd. I love clothes, I love shoes, I love handbags. And one of the really intriguing things about this show is how the costume design informs us so much about Sophie and about the setting. Like earlier, you talked about how water plays a very significant part in the aesthetics of this show, but I think the costuming for Sophie in particular informs us a lot about who she is, or even who she doesn't even know who she is, because a lot of her clothing is very either loose and flowy, or there's like a lot of dresses have like cutouts and asymmetrical stitching and construction, and she wears like a lot of strappy heels and strappy dresses, and a lot of them are muted tones, or what we would call like earth tones and water tones, like tan and brown and shades of blue. Teal, one of my favorite colors, features a lot in her clothing. So can you talk about just working with the costume designer and the production as well, because the production design also plays a part in the aesthetics and the visual look for Sophie as a character. So talk about building her with regards to visual styling and the clothing and the pieces that are selected, because they say so much about who she is as a person, or who she was before she lost her memory.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you appreciated the clothes. I think this is definitely a show for fans of fashion. And Sarah Bidlow, who was our costume designer, I think did an incredible job, and it was incredibly collaborative working with her to build Sophie's closet, and not just her closet, but like you said, these clothes, how they bring out different sides of her personality, and as we see in the pilot, there's the floral dress, that's the classic feminine demure dress that James prefers, and that's almost a role that she's playing as the sort of good wife, to be the wife of this venture capitalist, successful husband. But then there's also what we call the black dress, which actually was a deep color of blue, but the slinky dress that she finds in the back of her wardrobe that she doesn't recognize, and realizes that that's the dress that she wore with Baden. And from the sex tape footage that she finds, that sort of unlocks a whole other side of Sophie. And it was really fun to find those dresses. I mean, but specifically the black dress, because episode 5 is almost entirely in that dress, when she takes the hallucinogenics and goes on that massive trip at the art gala. And so it was, that dress had to do a lot of things in terms of it needed to be sexy, but it also needed to be powerful, and it needed to, work well in the water, in all of the different settings at night. And so it was almost like auditioning a character, that dress in a way. But no, it was really great to kind of have this duality of different sides of her that are coming out in the costume, and then even down to the running look, which is really the only look that stays consistent throughout the show. It's so minimal. It's classic. We did think about having these different running looks, and very early on we were like, no, that's sort of her meditation, that's her alone time to process her thoughts and her memories, and that needs to be quite pure and quite simple, and actually authentically who she is. No makeup, just black hoodie and black leggings, and that's her essential self. And then the production design, the incredible Jeremy Stanbridge did an amazing job with the production design. Sophie's house, as you say, like the color palette being, you know, a lot of teal, a lot of that, the luxury velvety fabrics of the house and the marble, but they're also the colors of power, you know, the dark colors. Because I think, you know, speaking with Sam Miller, who was one of our, you know, main directors on the show, you know, creating an energy of it feeling unsettling. You know, you don't want the place, there is something, you know, unsettling under the surface of her world. And I think those deep, rich colors really ground that. And you know, a lot of cues from films like, you know, Vertigo to Eyes Wide Shut to, you know, movies that use cinematography in quite a striking way, you know, and those deep colors are very symbolic.
Yeah, I love the fashion and the costume design and the sets. And something I didn't mention earlier, but the jewelry as well, because a lot of it is very minimalist and very thin, like necklaces and earrings. So I love how it's just like demure, but still sexy in a way, you know, like femme fatale-ish, but not with a dagger. So I love that. So thank you so much for answering that.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit? One of the things that I feel like was important that you mentioned was that Sophie on the outside looks like a woman that has everything, you know, husband, money, status, and all those things. How there are many women that are like hiding in plain sight. In other words, they look like they have everything, but in reality, they're very lonely. They feel alone. They don't feel seen or heard, and they're really not living this so-called perfect life.
I agree. What's the question?
The question is, I mean, how much of that, because I think, you know, I think that's really vital to her in discovering who she is, because I think on the surface, in real life, we know so many people and we're like, oh, how are you unhappy? You have this amazing husband, you have this, you have that. And we don't focus on, but are you the person okay? Especially in this time where we're speaking more about mental health. Can you expand like how much of that is also her growth of understanding the things that she thinks she needed are not necessarily the things that were good for her?
Well, I'm so happy that you picked up on that, because I think that that's the subliminal, you know, messaging in the piece as well, you know, is that, you know, you can't cover up essentially who you are or your problems with material things. You know, I think ultimately your past is going to come back to be resolved, and the things that you push down, you know, and the things again in terms of mental health, you know, looking at I hope maybe, you know, the fact that somebody like Sophie seemingly has everything, but also has a lot of psychological issues to process, encourages people to maybe look a little deeper at, you know, than just the superficial, you know, in our culture, and actually really, you know, to see the person beneath all of that, all of those status symbols. I think that that's something that we're all trying to do, you know, post the pandemic, you know, to be a bit more real with each other, and, you know, bring our whole selves into spaces. And you know, it's not always easy, and I think there's an element of the show that is escapist and luxurious to look at. But as you get into it, you know, you get to see that that's not everything, as you said, and that you know, happiness and empowerment and fulfillment, some of those things can sometimes just be, you know, a golden cage, you know, and it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Hey, Gugu, I wanted to ask about working with Marianne Jean-Baptiste, because she's a pioneering, like, Black European actress who doesn't really get her flowers, and to be able to kind of share the screen with someone who who's created, you know, this path, but also the interaction between Sophie and her. So could you comment on that?
I love Marianne. I mean, I've just been a fan of hers for such a long time. And she actually went to the same drama school as me, in RADA in London. And yeah, just as you said, such a pioneer for British actresses of color working in America as she has done, you know, for such a long time, and really just her energy and her spirit. You know, she's just got such a brilliant spirit, and she's also brings such gravitas to the role of Hannah. So I was so excited at the prospect of working with her, and also the fact that our dynamic as characters, you know, the sort of therapist dynamic allows Sophie to sort of she's the only character that we really see Sophie take every piece of armor off with. You know, she's completely honest, she's completely thinking aloud, you know, and in a world where she's mostly having to constantly gauge who to trust and how much information to reveal, or you know, playing the perfect wife role. It was really fun to have those scenes with Marianne where Sophie can just be completely transparent in many ways as to, you know, her feelings, and you know, you know, it's occasionally in a petulant way, occasionally in a frustrated way. She could really vent everything that she was going through. So yeah, it was such a treat to work with Marianne, and she was so beloved with the whole cast. Even though she only had scenes with me, everybody loved her, you know, and everybody wanted to be around her beautiful energy.
I was like, can we trust her advice though?
I know, and that's how brilliant, you know, is she colluding with James? You know, is Hannah really, you know, as morally as solid as a therapist should be, you know, and yeah, it was great to kind of have those layers to her as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And congratulations again on the second season of Surface.
Thank you.
Work, and we certainly will continue to support you in everything that you do.
Thank you, guys. It's been wonderful speaking with you all. Thank you so much for taking the time.
On behalf of the world's largest group of Black TV and film critics, thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day and happy holidays.
Thank you.